Good evening. Good to see everybody again. I want to begin by actually thanking Black Workers for Justice, the organizers of the program here today, all my beloved friends and family in this space. Can you just give yourselves another hand for the love that you work with, that you organize with, and that you make a difference with? I am going to ask you just to do one more thing before I get to running my mouth, if that's all right. I'm a pastor, and so I know I get to speak tomorrow, so I won't try to hold you too late tonight. But I do want to ask you if you could just look at your neighbor and just remind them of how beautiful they are. Just remind them that they are a beautiful person. In a world like this, we need that reminder every now and again. Anytime I speak, I don't speak for myself. I speak with many others. Being back here in this same building, probably about 20 or 15 years, where I received my first award for organizing from this very organization, a self-determination award that actually inspired and moved me to keep on going. I grew up not too far away from here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and so I want to honor my mother and my father, W.J. and Carol Morris. I want to give thanks to my wife who couldn't be here today, but she inspired me today, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But I didn't want to forget a few things. That I also come from the beloved Community Center, which was founded by Reverend Nelson Johnson, among others, and Miss Joyce Johnson, and so I would be remiss if I didn't call their names into this space. Like Mom Mary, I also speak from my heart too. But I did write down a few things because I didn't want to forget to say them. So I'll just say a few things just to set some of the conditions under which we're living. But as we gather tonight in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. and our shared fight for justice, we also draw strength from our past. A past marked by the relentless spirit of the 1930s, the revolutionary courage of the 70s, and the resilient defiance of the 1980s. Just as those organized in errors and struggles and built the foundation of our rights today, we too must hold the line, defending every one gain and pushing forward to claim the futures we so rightly deserve. In our unities as Black workers, we echo their legacy by standing firm against injustice and by forging a path to a more equitable tomorrow. But to open our discussions, I do want to come from a particular theme I do remember. A pivotal question was asked in a journal that I read a couple of days ago. The journal was called The 80s. It says, how do we organize the people's movement today? Two pressing conditions bring this question into sharp focus for me. The first condition is the assault on the aggressive neoliberal policies, a systematic dismantling of our public institution, an unwavering shift of power toward corporate interests. These forces not only erode the safety nets that built and protect our communities, but also attempt to weaken the very foundation upon which collective action is built. The second condition is the stark reality of state repression, where dissent is met with surveillance, intimidation, and legal barriers designed to silence voices of resistance. This climate of fear and control challenges us to reimagine and reinforce our methods of mobilizing for change. But together, these conditions compel us to revitalize strategies of our predecessors. We must blend the grassroots organizing of the 30s, the bold alliance-building spirit of the 70s, and face modern repression with resilient, innovative tactics. Our struggle is not just for protection of what is ours, it is for the futures that we deserve. We answer this call with unity, determination, and a clear vision for justice. But now I want to ask you about a country that refuses to grieve. I was listening to a short documentary called The Black Panther Cubs about the children of Black Panther activists and organizers. They said, what becomes of a country that refuses to grieve? I come from a city that took 41 years to grieve over the 1979 Greensboro massacre, the daylight assassination of leaders in broad daylight in a city that forgot itself and its role in it. It took 41 years for them to stumble to the line and offer a statement of regret. It took them 41 years to name 5 scholarships in the name of 5 who were slain on that day. It took them 41 years. And now the attacks on our memory are very clear to me that our memories are part and parcel our power. If they can help us forget ourselves, they may make us forget our future. I'm a Lucille Clifton fan, and she writes poetry, and she has written an anthology, and I come across her works every so often, but I just really can't shake one that I read recently. It said, "Why people be mad at me sometimes." Do you all have people that are mad at you when you do what you do? Why people be mad at me sometimes? And if you resonate with this, feel free to make some noise. She says, they tell me to remember, but they want me to remember their memories. But I go on remembering mine. I'm going to say that one more time, because they tell me to remember, but they want me to remember their memories. But I just keep on going and remembering mine. In preparation for today, I just sat down and I started picking up some journals in my libraries. Libraries are important. I know y'all know that in here. But that we document our work. We document what has happened in years gone by so that the years go forward don't pass us by so quickly. You can be a time traveler and slow down time if you know your history. You know a little bit about that? It doesn't seem like a whole bunch of chaos and noise and confusion and misdirection if you know that you've been here before. If you see this slate of executive orders, you're reminded of a time period where you've been here before. If you are forced as a person that's freshly out of some really hard times and you're reconstructing a community and a foundation from which collective action can be taken, you might remember that you've been here before. And so when you get to this stage and phase, I just realized I picked up a journal. It said, Organizing for Power for Lessons from the 30s, 70s, and 80s. And this was published in 1983. I picked up another book, and it said Palestinian Liberation, the Anti-War Movement, and the African American Liberation Struggle, Black Workers League. And this was also written in the 80s. I remember the University of Pennsylvania Journal of Labor and Employment Law that says Reflections on an Attempt to Build Authentic Community in the Greensboro Kmart Labor Struggle from the volume number 2 of spring 2000. Reflections from Reverend Nelson Johnson. Somehow, some way, those that don't seem like they are here still get to be here. Those that might be freshly missing from our memories and the hallways where we recognize and see them and know them kind of get to live on if you keep living on. Kind of keep working and kind of keep organizing if you keep organizing. In this reflection on an attempt to build authentic community in the Greensboro Kmart labor struggle, Reverend Johnson named out 2 important parts of what it means to be a community. He said that there's a spatial community. A spatial community is your home, it's your neighborhood, it's your local stores. It's the backdrop of how you live and you breathe every single day. But there's something about this relational community that he prioritized. He said there's something about building an affirming community where people look at each other and remind each other that they are beautiful. It's something about looking at someone and finding one thing that you're grateful for in a world that tries to take away everything to be grateful for. It's something powerful about somebody who speaks their voice, then becomes discredited, targeted, surveilled, and harmed, but they still feel at home because they got a room full like this. There's something powerful that happens when the books emerge as your friends. One of the things that I don't want to forget to mention to all of us tonight is that there is a program, and you know it well. If you're in this room and you have read that number on the wall, 40th annual. I'm 39. This is my first time being 39, y'all, so I just want to shout that out. I'm stumbling to the line in about 20 days to 40, making my way, pressing my way, and it'll be my first time being 40 years old. Did y'all know that? But in all of our first times being who we are at this particular stage of our experiences, I'm so glad that we have redemption songs that can turn into freedom songs. I'm so glad that I can pull from a history that tells me a change is gonna come. I'm so glad that when I get confused and frustrated with everything that I see that is causing over 1,100 sites across this country to rise up today and over 10,000 to join themselves together here. And when I get frustrated and I wonder if it's working out, I don't listen to the music in my ears. I go back to my enslaved ancestors and say, there's music up above my head. And I can hear freedom in my ears. There is something about radical hospitality that shows up in the trenches, and those that oppress never get to taste it. I found myself in the summer of 2023 traversing from Bethlehem to Ramallah to Hebron in Palestine. And when we passed a red sign that said that you should not go past here, it is dangerous for visitors, and it began to marginalize and delegitimize the people that we were going to see in Hebron, I sat in a place that they said that I should not go. But I found that it reminded me of my grandma's house, to be honest. We began to eat the traditional food, and they said, do you want to have a little bit of time in another room? So they took me to another room. The room had this green couch, and it was adorned in all types of beauty. And I sat down because it still had plastic on the couch. That's why I said it looked like my grandma's house. And I felt the welcome of people that I was told to distance myself from. I felt the closure of unauthorized separation. I felt the connections and the bonds that I learned about through Black Workers for Justice, telling me about the struggle needs to be internationalized, not only in practice, but in your body. I don't want us to forget our bodies, because our blood always remembers. And if our blood remembers, then we should remember. Don't lose ourselves in this movement moment. And I realized, and I'm so glad that I set my clock to not go over my time. I'll leave you with this because I'm thinking about it as a scene in a movie. Two folks were riding on a horse, and one was capturing the other. And they began to have a conversation under the dark canvas of the skies. And one said to the other, have you ever counted the stars? And he said, well, every time I try, I end up losing count. The other rider remarked and responded and said, well, that's okay. Your body knows, it's your mind that forgot. The reason I'm resonating with this so much is because I have a commitment in my soul. And I hope that you have a commitment too about why you're here on this earth. And I hope that it goes undisturbed through this next season that we're living in. Because my commitment, and I'll say it out loud, I kept it quiet for over 3 years because I wrote it on a beach, and a beach where I was told to think about the end of my life because the end of others' lives ended right there at that beach. I was told to think like that, to conjure up what they called a dangerous memory. Johann Metz, as a theologian, said the dangerous memory is all that collected trauma, hurt, harm, and danger right below the surface. And when it gets tapped, it resurges itself back into the form that created it. And so all I'm saying is that I have a dangerous memory that caused me to write down that I am here to create emotional and historical relief from emotional and historical bondage as long as I live. Whatever I can do to contribute to that for others is wonderful. I'm thankful. But I know that I must commit to doing that for myself. So for anybody that's ever been on program, has anybody ever had their own program that you get up in the morning and this is what you do when you wake up? And this is what I do during the midday. And before I lay my head down, this is what I say to my pillow. I don't know if anybody has ever had a program. Well, if you're like me, every now and again you might fall off program. I didn't fall off program tonight. I ate pretty good. Make sure y'all tell my wife that. But it's time for all of us to get back on program. What is your program? I was with Reverend Johnson in Detroit, and I'll end with this, where he said to a crowd that had just endured 300 shutoffs of water in their neighborhood. And they committed to waging love on the people. We are not waging war, we are waging love. In response to the war that has been set upon our bodies and the bodies of those that we love, I am willing to wage love with each and every one of you all. If you go out here today and y'all didn't get one thing, at least you know you're beautiful. Love y'all.